You're listening to Unshaken, the Hope Dealer podcast, where we rise, heal, and make no excuses. I'm your host, Jason Brooks. Let's turn trauma into truth and pain into power. Let's go. What's up, y'all? It's your host, Jason, with the second episode of Unshaken, the Hope Dealer podcast. It is Saturday, and this to me is a fantastic episode. This is probably going to be one of the most important episodes we will ever have because this deals with mental health struggles, and we're going to call this the silent killer. This is going to be talking about the battles that people don't talk about, right? And this is something that's affected me personally on many levels, many times. I've lost a lot of people dealing with depression, mental health struggles, suicide. So that's the trigger warning, right? There will be mentions of that, but that's, if that affects you in any way, I'm just letting you know that it will be prevalent in this episode, but it's going to be a positive episode. So don't be discouraged by that. But without further ado, mental health has been a struggle of mine in the past, and it all boils down to the addiction that I've had. Right. So, I've struggled with addiction 30 years or so. When you're an addict, you're covering up for something, right? Whether it's inadequacy with your confidence or trauma or whatnot, you're always masking something. You're always trying to cover up something. And the alcohol or the drugging is very temporary, right? It feels wonderful for a time, but then it's gone and you feel 1,000 times worse. My birthday is in February, and back in 2021, in just a couple of days of my birthday, my best friend, one of my two best friends, passed away, right? And I put a lot of blame on myself just because he had called me, I didn't answer, and I didn't call him back. And then within a couple days, he passed, right? So, and we had always talked pretty regularly before this, and I put a lot of blame on myself because the two of us, we went through a lot of struggles together. But after his passing, this led to my downfall. It wasn't him. It wasn't that. It was me, right? Because I put a lot of blame on myself. I thought that, it was my fault, that I could have changed something by calling him, which is dumb to think that, because obviously that had no effect on it, or would not have had any effect on it. But, when you're an addict and you're living that life, you don't think any better. But anyways, after this happened, over the course of the next 3 months, 4 months, I went downhill, and I went downhill fast. I mean, when you think about, the snowball effect, like it literally went from a small snowball to a huge mountain of snow, like really, really fast. Like I can remember within 2 weeks of when I went into rehab, in 1 week, I spent 11th partying. It was horrible. The last couple weeks before I went to rehab, I felt like my walls were literally closing in. Like, have you ever seen those movies where, there's somebody's trapped, right? And the walls are closing in and they don't know how to get out. They can't escape. That's the way my world felt, right? Number one, when you're a drug addict, you have drugs around all the time. And my house was the party house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's, you have drugs everywhere, abundance of drugs and people. One of my worries was my house would get raided at any time. I even had cops come to my house banging on my door for other reasons, right? But I automatically thought that it was for drugs. So that was one of my worries. My other worry was I was having financial troubles. When you're an addict and closed up in your house, you don't answer the door, you don't pay your bills. Sooner or later, they come a-calling, right? So I was worried about the bill collectors. I was worried about the IRS, between wondering if I was going to have my assets seized, my house taken, my house raided. One way or another, I thought I was going to lose it all, including my kids. So I just reached a point where I thought that my life was over. I had no reason to be here, that the world would be a better place without me, that my kids would be better off without me. Like that, even though I was around my kids. I never missed a beat as far as seeing my kids. Like, it's one thing I never did. I do always take pride in that. I was never an absent father. But without being said, I was also here. I felt like I definitely wasn't present. In my mind, I exposed them to a lot more than I should have. They didn't see anything like as far as like anything illegal or anything like that, but there were still like people around all the time. And it's not anything that I would ever do being like I am sober, right? So, but anyways, leading up to this, there was just about every day, when I was trying to go to sleep, I would just lay in bed and tell myself, Jason, you got to slow the fuck down. But if you've ever been an addict, you know that slowing down doesn't work. Slowing down is just slowing down your ultimate death or your imprisonment. And so I knew that wasn't going to work. But I'd also tell myself, Jason, you just have to fucking stop, right? Again, I've been to the hospital so many times. I've been admitted so many times. I've spent weeks in the hospital. I've already been to rehab before for 30 days. I should have died multiple times. I mean, actually the first time I went to rehab, they wouldn't even admit me into rehab until I had shots of nitro. It was absolutely ridiculous. So I shouldn't even be here now. But by the grace of whatever your beliefs are, I am here. But again, when that time came, like I said, I thought the world would be better off without me. But like I said before, going back, me and my ex wife, we rotate every week. So, on this particular Monday, I was taking their kids back to their mother's house, just like I normally do. In my mind, this was going to be the last time I was ever going to see my kids, the last time they were going to see me. So I took them to their mom's house. I was dropping them off, and I always hug them. I always give them a hug and kiss and tell them I love them, right? And my daughter now is 15, going on 16. My son is 12, going on 13. So they were a lot younger then. But this day, I hugged them, and I hugged them extra tight and told them I loved them. Probably told them I loved them more than normal. I'm sure they were probably wondering like, what's up with dad? But again, in my mind, this was the last time I was going to see him. So told them goodbye. And then once that happened, and they live out in the country just a little bit. But after this happened, I drove around, right? So I just drove around these country roads. And what I was doing was I was looking for the biggest row of trees that I could hit without missing, that I could die without failing. At this time, I was driving a Challenger, right? Dodge Challenger. And just was driving with my hands on the wheel. And I was speeding, of course, because whatever I could do to have maximum impact with the least possible chance of survival is what I was doing. And I would just drive, hands on the wheel, let go, drift. But then I would just talk myself out of it, pull it back. And I would always talk myself out of it. Nope, tree's not big enough. I would just break that tree. There's a gap there. I would end up going between the trees. Nope, that's just going to hurt me. For some reason or another, I just kept talking myself out of it. But it was divine intervention, right? Because I'm supposed to be here now talking to you. But I ended up pulling over on the side of the road. Thankfully, I did. And at this point, I was bawling like a little baby. I mean, I literally was like, and I'm not a crier. I don't have a lot of emotion, but this particular time I did. And I take that back. Now I have emotion. Back then I didn't. I've learned that I'm a very empathetic person. I'm an empath. I didn't know that then, but I've discovered. But anyways, pulled over on the side of the road, and I realized that I needed help. So I Googled rehab, right? And it was showing me that there was a in-house rehabilitation place right where I was at. And I just took it for its word that it was. But I mean, looking back, there was no rehab where I was at. But they said, hey, Jason, we have a bed for you in West Palm Beach. So within 48 hours, I was at rehab in West Palm Beach doing my detox, And then I did my, like 25-day stint, really. It saved my life, right? And that's why I'm here today. So that's that, really. But the whole purpose of that is, I know it seems like that's about addiction, and it kind of is, but the main purpose of this story is the mental health and the depression and the struggles and the silent battle that I was going through. So I had been an addict for, like I said, 3 decades, right? And only the people that I was an addict with, that I was partying with, knew what I was going through. I mean, they didn't know that I was depressed and things like that. Nobody knew that I was depressed. Nobody knew what I was going through. Nobody asked, right? So the people that I work with, they didn't know. They just assumed that I was living the life that I had shown, right? They didn't know anything was different. What I will say, though, is today's world is fucked up. People are struggling in all walks of life. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're rich, poor, black, white, male, female. It doesn't matter. People are outright struggling. This world, this country, it's become an ugly place in a lot of regards. Inflation's at an all-time high. People are struggling with credit card debt. People are losing their jobs. People are getting deported. There's politics are wild. People are hating people for this belief, this religion, that religion. It sucks that it's like that, but people are just struggling with mental health issues. So, and a lot of people are raised to not talk, and especially if you're from my generation, you're raised to not talk. And a lot of family dynamics these days, you just don't talk. That's one thing that I'm proud of, that I want to be able to spread on this podcast too, is to be very transparent with your children. My children know everything about me now, and I'm hoping they have that in their back pocket, they take forward. So, like, if they ever get peer pressured or whatnot, they know the repercussions or the possibilities that addiction runs in our family or mental health. So they know how to deal with it, right? And know how to move forward. And if they decide to make this choice or make that choice, they know how to deal with it. But anyways, the bottom line is check in on your people, whether it's your friends, your families, your coworkers. Check in on your people. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know what people are battling. Depression is a silent killer. People are taking themselves out on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Drugs aren't the only thing killing people, right? Even though a lot of these are going to be based on addiction, mental health is a silent killer. So, again, check in on your people. There's different ways you can do it without being too invasive. Ask open-ended questions, right? Don't just ask yes or no questions. Ask open-ended questions. Just ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their family's doing. Last time I saw you, it seemed like you were struggling with this. How are things going now? Ask open-ended questions. The most important thing is, don't come across as being judgmental. Don't be judgmental. I've never walked in your shoes. You've never walked in my shoes. Don't judge me. I'm not going to judge you. Like, I've been through the fucking dirt, through the mud. Okay. I'm not going to judge anybody. I don't have the right to judge anybody. You don't have the right to judge me. Okay. So don't be judgmental. And I said that was the most important thing. That is not the most important thing. Here's the most important thing. And you husbands, boyfriends, you should know this, or if you don't, learn this. And you females out there, thank me. Number one piece of advice when you are checking in on your people: listen, open your ears, but don't just open your ears, hear, listen to people, okay? The opposite of addiction is what? Connection. The opposite of addiction is connection. People want to feel connection. People want to feel like they're a part of something. Okay. So when you're checking in on your people, don't ask questions to respond. Right. So if I learned this when I was married, I'd probably still be married. But I used to always listen to react to argue back, to defend myself. Well, it's one thing when you're married, even though I was wrong, but it's another thing when you're trying to help somebody. Listen, just listen to them. You'd be surprised how much you can help somebody by letting them know that you care enough to hear them, right? Don't try to help them right away. Let them express themselves because they may be coming from a family where they didn't have that, where they didn't have the opportunity for somebody to listen to them. They probably weren't. They were probably shut down instantly. They might be in a relationship where they're shut down instantly. They may be in a relationship where they're mentally or physically abused. Again, it's the silent killer. So you just do not know the position somebody is in. Check in on your people. Anyways, that's going to wrap up this episode of Unshaken, the Hope Dealer podcast. I love you all. Keep following along. This is going to be a fantastic season. I look forward to seeing you. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Unshaken, the Hope Dealer podcast, where we turn trauma into truth and pain into power. If you've enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and keep showing up for your healing. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and stay unshaken.